this is when time just stops. You know, it is like a movie. And I didn't eat breakfast. I think I had a little bit of milk. And then they called us all to line up, and then we're off downstairs to get processed to go to court. We had to strip out of our prison clothes, which is, you know, I don't know. I've never been a team sport player, so you know, you get naked in front of 20 strangers in this big line, and off we go to court. Court was really just, you know, not really anything much. The lawyer they provided me just said, you know, just don't fight the extradition. I was getting extradited to Washington State, and so that's what I did. I didn't fight it. I was in court for about 2 minutes, out of court, and then you're back into a holding tanks. And this is a new world that you're in. You're in a holding tank. I'm in there with some Bloods to keep the Crips separate. It's a whirlwind. That afternoon, I was put onto a bus. I was chained to a couple other blokes, and they really don't think this through, which is quite funny. My wrist is chained to his waist, my leg's chained to his leg, and then there's 4 of us like that. It's hard enough getting onto a bus, you know, when you're carrying a bag. Imagine carrying 3 other dudes with you all in one line. And again, 2 seats here, an aisle, and 2 seats there, and we're all chained together. Even the physics of that didn't work. Somebody's going to be sort of squatting in the middle. And I remember him yelling out to the bus driver, "Hey, this doesn't work." And he said, "Just shut the fuck up." I'm like, okay, so they don't care about seatbelt safety over here either. So off we go. And we're heading to a place called San Bernardino. A couple of famous things about San Bernardino. Home of McDonald's, that's where McDonald's started. It's where the Hells Angels also started, with San Bernardino, and it's known as the gang capital of really California. It's where the Bloods and the Crips and everyone fight, is in San Bernardino. You get burgers and have a good gun battle. I'm heading to a county jail there because the feds are all full up. So I get processed into what's called a gladiator tank, or a fed tank. And what it is 4 walls and a concrete roof, no windows. You don't know what time of night or day it is. 3 bunks stacked high, and about 180 guys in this one, I'd say, area, a bit smaller than this, about 1/3 of the size. And those bunks are like neighbourhoods. You don't walk through a black area, you don't walk through the Mexican area, you can disrespect people. You are in it now. You don't use certain bathrooms. There's rules, and you better fucking learn these rules real quick. I had no money on my books, so I couldn't buy anything. And there's 10 toilets lined up on the wall. Good luck, you know, if you've got stage fright. And there's no guards. When they throw you in there, a white guy comes up to you, tells you the rules, said if you break them, there's going to be severe consequences. I got a little bit of a break because I'm an Aussie in an American prison, but they definitely want to know what you're in jail for. Turns out, I'm a little bit of a celebrity. I got a cool crime. I'm a smuggler, and not only a smuggler, I'm a helicopter smuggler, which sort of put my story up there, which gave me a little bit of status. But I'm still in a bit of a whirlwind. I think I spent 10 days there. Then I went to another county jail for another few days. You know, your life isn't yours anymore. You don't know what's happening. It's just, you're strapped onto a rocket and you have no control over it. You have no control over anything in your life. When you shit, eat, sleep, what you do, can't use the phone, you're cut off from everything. And not only that, I've got my mum on my mind, I'm dealing with that. So, yeah, I'm pretty fucked up, and I'm not sure what's gonna happen. And you don't know what's gonna happen because I don't call you. And I'm just wondering, when am I gonna get up to Seattle to get this all sorted out? I get a call at about 3 o'clock in the morning, "Smith, roll up, you're out of here." Sweet, I'm gonna be on a plane. I figure I must be on Alaskan Airlines or United or something. Again, another stupid move. Chained up. I remember being in the back of a sheriff car. Then I got put onto a bus. Didn't have any windows. And I went to Chin Chin prison, state prison, one of the scariest places you've ever been. I was only there for a couple of hours. I was on a bit of a bus trip through the outback of California until we got to the Mojave Desert. And I'm like, this shit is straight out of a movie. Because there was a 727, a white plane. It's called a JPEG flight, or better known to the rest of the world as Conair. A couple funny points about being on this little bus tour is I was chained next to a guy from Alabama. And I was happy to be outside. And the funny thing is when they switch you out to go on this flight, I was actually switching from states to the feds. So we were all in the clothes that we were arrested in. So I was back in my normal clothes and I sort of felt a little bit human, but I was chained next to this guy from Alabama and I said to him, "Mate, so what are you doing out here in California?" And he said, "Oh, I've been out here on trial." And I said, "Oh, how'd you go?" He said, "I got triple life." And I said, "My arm is chained to his waist. So that means you've done 3 murders or thereabouts." He goes, "Ah." He goes, "It's all right because I'm doing triple life in Alabama, so who gives a fuck?" I'm chained next to a serial killer now. And there's all these points of reality. It's like, how the fuck did a boy from central Queensland that come from a coal mining background, that grew up next to his grandparents, riding his bike, get chained to a serial killer from Alabama? But here I was. Okay, so we actually were parked at the back of the plane. It takes hours to load this plane, about 6 hours to load the plane. I'm chained next to a guy with doing 6 life sentences, and I'm about to step onto Conair. It's a really unique thing. It's run by the US Marshal Service, and it's definitely not your Qantas or Virgin Airlines. Everyone's got a shotgun and they point it clearly at your head. So as you sort of scoot there, you're chained from the waist, you're chained to your belly, and you've got what's called a black box on, which was invented by a prisoner so you can't pick your lock. Mainly used in the federal system for all the big boys. And it's a lock that goes over your handcuffs, and that actually has a padlock that runs through it that's chained to your waist. And then that's all chained to your feet. So Houdini couldn't get out of this thing. And up you go via the back of the plane, get on this thing and you're off. And the funny thing is the pilot comes on and he doesn't tell you where the exit rows are. He just says, you know, "Welcome to the JPEG flight, prisoner transfer flight." He's like, "If you need to use a restroom during this flight, you can just shit yourself. Shut the fuck up and enjoy your flight." At that point, I realised that I am not on Qantas's frequent flyer miles. So off we go. And they don't tell you where you're going. First point of call was, we stopped in at Albuquerque, New Mexico, spent a little bit of time there, and then off to the ADX in Florence, Colorado. Very well known for the ADX is the most high-tech prison in the entire country. That's where Timothy McVeigh was, Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, all these big boys are actually at the ADX. And in my humorous, when the plane landed, the marshal was standing next to me. I looked and I said, "Where are we?" And he said, "Yeah, you're in Florence, Colorado." And it was completely flat. And I said, "Oh, that John Denver was sure full of shit." I thought it was very funny. The prisoner behind me thought it was funny. The US Marshal with the shotgun didn't think it was so funny. So I spent a bit of time there. Eventually got up and eventually got to Washington State, a couple other prisons, and started doing my case. In between this, my brother actually got a hold of me I can't remember which prison it was. The warden called and said, "You've got a call." And it was my little brother. And my brother, you know, he gave me a call and he said, "How you doing, bro?" And I said, "Good." I couldn't believe he'd tracked me down, you know, but that's that brotherly thing. I couldn't believe he'd tracked me down. And he said, "How you doing?" I said, "Yeah, I'm good, mate." I said, "How's mum?" And he goes, "She's good, she's fine." I said, "Is she fighting?" He said, "No, mate, she's all good." He didn't want to tell me that she was dead and that she had been buried 3 weeks earlier. So that was a little bit part of our family. So I got up and fought my case as long as I could until I eventually took a plea deal. Prison, lots of funny stories and lots of, good and bad moments. The one thing about prison, I've never been in the army. Clearly I wasn't smart enough to get into the army, but there is this solidarity in there, because about 8 months, maybe more, I can't remember, into my sentence, I got a letter from my dad. I chose not to talk to anyone on the phone. It was the way I was dealing with it. The first day in court, they told me that I was going to do a minimum of 87 years and a maximum of 127. And they try and actually throw you off your game, and it definitely does the job, because that put the fear of God into me, and that's what it's meant to do. It can break a lot of people, and it does. Unfortunately, there was a young kid, another helicopter pilot from Canada, that got popped, and he got indicted. And on his first day, they told him the same as what they told me. He stood up in court, and they said, "You're looking at a minimum of 87 years and a maximum of 127." And he went back to his cell that night and he hung himself, and he was 23. So they know how to scare the shit out of you, and it works. It's one of the most scariest things you'll ever go through in your life. One of the most scariest things I've ever been through in my life. So, there was ups and downs in prison. There was good times and bad times. There was highs and lows of doing time. Some of the people you meet, Smiling Richard Fable, National President of Hell's Angels. I did time with some of the biggest gangsters, some mob people. Very funny bank robbers are very funny, and I know I shouldn't make light of it, but they never put a lot of thought into their crime. I felt I put a lot of thought into it, but bank robbers always, it's the last minute thing, which I never understood. You're heading to the gym and I didn't have any money that day, so I thought I'd pull over and rob a bank, and I got caught. Funny that. But prison went through it, and I got through it. I got emails about, I got a reasonable sentence. I was in there under 2 years, and I got a reasonable sentence. They pinned me for what they could get me for, which I pled guilty for. I didn't rat on anyone, I didn't tell on anyone, and I was the only one out of the whole organisation that ever did time. Everyone knew how to stay out of the US, and that's, I was the only one ever caught for it. Overall, I got sentenced in December. I can't remember what year I got sentenced. It takes over a year and a bit to finally work out a deal. And so I knew I only had 6-7 months left to go upon sentencing. Some of the dark days, like I said, I got a letter from Dad close to a year in saying, "Your mum's estate has been hard to deal with," and I broke down that day. And I don't care how tough you are, when you lose your mum inside and you're in prison, it's one of the hardest, darkest days. And I had 122 guys in my unit, and every single one of them came in and gave me a hug and just said, "You are doing the hardest time any man could do." It's just something very personal about losing your mum. My lawyer came to me a couple of weeks before sentencing and said that your brother wanted to come over and see you. And I said, "Look, no, I didn't want to see anyone. I felt it was the easiest way for me to do my time, was just to isolate, and just live my life inside there." I was in Supermax, so I never went outside, I never touched grass, never seen the sky. I think I was in a building. I was on about the 7th floor, but you couldn't see anything. It was just like time had stood still. So I said, "There's no point. You get about an hour's visit." I think on a Saturday, Sunday, you could have an hour, and I thought it was a long way to fly from Australia to come and see me for possibly 2 hours. I just said, "Tell him I'm okay and I'll see him soon." So I do my time. Release day is nothing happy. It was actually April 1st. I remember it was April 1st because I thought they were playing a joke on me. Tommy Raines actually played a bit of a joke on me that day with the guard, and I got up really early that morning. I was very excited to be released from prison, and Tom got the guard to play a joke on me, and And as we're walking around the top tier, I was waiting for that phone call, and I could look down. You know, I'd been walking since they popped the doors at 4:30 in the morning. And, you know, all the boys were sad to see me go. I'd made some good friends in there. And I remember about 8 o'clock, I could hear the guard's phone ring, and he called up, and then he put the game down, he popped out the bag and he said, "Smith." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Mate, there's been stuff up with the paperwork. Your lawyer will call you later. I'm not getting released." And he said, "Your lawyer will be in touch with you later." I've never broken down, well, I broke down many times, but I had a bit of a quiver in my lip, like I couldn't believe this was actually happening. And out of the corner of my eye, I seen Tommy Raines with a bit of a grin on his face, and I looked back at the guard with a grin on his face, and I thought, "You motherfucker." I ran after that little prick, but I couldn't catch him. He said, "Pack your shit up, you're out of here." So I was very excited. It's a feeling you'll never describe, but it was a little bit short-lived, because I went from there to immigration prison, and the US hadn't finished with me yet. I spent the next 3 months in another type of prison, and that wore me down. But there's certain moments in time which you actually remember. And I hadn't been outside for 2 years. I hadn't felt grass or dirt or anything. And I remember walking down to my first week in immigration prison, and it's white. The lights are never off. And I remember them saying, "Who wants to go outside? Sign up." And I went to the guard, and I was trying to say, "What do you mean outside?" And he said, "Oh, we've got a yard." And I said, "What, with dirt and grass and stuff?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "You're going to let me go out there?" He said, "Yeah, like, what aren't you getting, dickhead? Put your name down in here, stand in the fucking line, you can go outside." I have never been more excited to rub my feet on grass, to feel the dirt, to just stand out there. It was again, it was one of those moments. It's like being reborn. When they cracked that door and I felt that sun hit my body, it was just an incredible feeling. I spent the next 3 months in immigration jail till finally they found my passport, and I was deported back to Australia. I got deported back to Australia, and I knew I had something to. I had blocked out my emotions. I held them inside, because that's what I had to do for that time I was there. And it was coming up. I had to pay the price, and this was the price. I was in a one-piece jumpsuit because they fucked up my clothes and I didn't have any clothes, so I wore a prison thing on a flight. I got to South Korea. I thought I was going to get arrested there. The police picked me up from there and got me on the next plane, so obviously the US facilitated that, and everything I had was in a clear plastic bag. I got into Sydney. I hadn't spoken to my dad in close to 2 years. Knew that Mum was dead, but I didn't want to accept it. I had a beard at the time because I only had single razors. All my shit was in a clear plastic bag. My girlfriend had facilitated a flight from Sydney up to Rockhampton, and I got on the flight and I ran into an old girlfriend that was actually the air hostess for Qantas. I looked like a bag of shit, and she actually let me sit up the front. I never told her why my carry-on luggage was in a clear plastic bag and I was in a one-piece jumpsuit. She clearly thought I just got out of a mental institution, and nothing was said. I land back in Rockhampton, and this is when a stomach's in my throat. That plane touches down in central Queensland, and I got to get off and I've got to face some reality. I walked inside into the terminal, and I walked past my dad. So in that time, he had aged, and I didn't look the same. I'd lost a lot of weight, and we didn't say anything to each other. He gave me a hug, and we got in the car. We never said a word from the drive to the family home, but I cried a bit, and he said, "You'll be all right." He didn't, that's all he said. So we pulled into the family home, And, you know, reality is, this is the point that I've got to pay the piper. And so reality is set in. And I got the plastic bag, and I walked into the living room, and, you know, I seen Mum's chair sitting there. And so I was walking in a circle in the living room, and my dad said to me, "Tim, I need you to sit down." And I said, "It's okay, Dad. I know Mum's dead." He goes, "No, I've got something I've got to tell you. I need you to sit down." So I sat down, and he stood in front of me and said, "Your little brother's dead. He killed himself Christmas Eve." So, fuck. I think I went and punched the kitchen table and smashed it, and smashed a chair, and Dad tried to hug me and tried to calm me down, and I just screamed, why? The fucking guilt that I felt that came over me was just... I didn't get a 2-year sentence. Yeah. I got life. Because for good or for bad, when my lawyer came to me and said he wanted to come and see me, he didn't want to come and see me, he needed me. And I wasn't there. Whether that's true or not, we'll never know. That died with him. But he was always my biggest supporter. And so for that selfish decision to think you're going to be all cool, and, you know, you're one of the biggest drug smugglers in time, and, you know, prison, you know, could be cool or it couldn't be cool. I didn't know what price I was going to have to pay.